Sometimes, the smallest choice can change everything. Ethan Miller muttered under his breath as he stepped cautiously over jagged red rocks, the alien sun dipping low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of molten orange and deep violet, the wind carrying the sharp scent of ionized metal and dust that stung his eyes. And somewhere up ahead, a large shape trembled against the dying light, scales shimmering with hues he had no names for, the creature's movements hesitant, almost fearful, yet powerful, its body entangled in a lattice of alien machinery that hummed faintly. Ethan's fingers grazed the cold metal, tools rattling softly in his pack, a quiet determination settling in his chest as he crouched beside the alien, assessing the intricate trap with careful precision. The creature's eyes, iridescent, reflective, almost human in their depth, locked onto him, and for a heartbeat, time slowed, the wind pausing as though the universe itself was waiting. Then he worked, each click and twist echoing across the barren canyon, sparks dancing off jagged edges, the alien's breathing deepening, vibrating softly through the ground. Ethan felt the pulse of life beneath his hands, a fragile connection forming between them without words, a mutual understanding that transcended species. The sun dipped lower, long shadows stretching and twisting around them, dust motes caught in beams of light, like tiny galaxies suspended in the air. And when the final restraint fell away, the alien shifted cautiously, scales catching every color of the sky, head tilting. Sensing the absence of danger, Ethan stepped back, chest heaving, and in the silence that followed, he realized the weight of his choice, that his small act of kindness had created a fragile trust in the vast, indifferent expanse of the universe. The alien stepped forward, not with aggression, but with measured curiosity, each movement deliberate, wings folding slightly, eyes never leaving his. And Ethan's own gaze softened, a mix of relief, wonder, and anticipation, building inside him, as though the canyon itself held its breath, watching the first moments of an unspoken alliance. The wind began to rise again, carrying whispers of storms yet to come, and for the first time since he had set foot on this foreign world, Ethan felt the quiet thrill of having made a difference, tiny but undeniable, a spark of connection in a galaxy that often seemed devoid of warmth. The sun had almost disappeared below the jagged horizon, leaving streaks of violet and crimson stretching across the sky, and Ethan Miller stood beside Lyra, feeling the residual warmth of her scales radiating faintly into his hands as he adjusted the small pack on his back, each strap snug and familiar, a reminder that he was far from Earth but still tethered to routine and purpose. He watched as Lyra flexed her wings tentatively, the motion stirring tiny clouds of dust that sparkled in the remaining light, and he felt a strange calm, the storm from earlier replaced by a quiet tension, a space filled with potential rather than fear. Ethan took a slow breath, hearing the subtle hum of the alien machinery left scattered across the canyon floor, the sound like a heartbeat in the silence. Lyra shifted closer, her head tilting as if asking permission to move forward, and Ethan nodded, allowing her to guide the way through narrow rock formations that caught the last glints of sunlight. The shadows stretching and merging like ink across a canvas, every step measured and deliberate, their movements synchronized in a silent dance of trust. Ethan noticed how the light caught the edges of her scales, iridescent flashes revealing patterns he had never imagined, a beauty that made the barren landscape feel alive. And as they moved deeper into the canyon, the wind began to pick up again, carrying a sharp metallic scent that hinted at distant machinery. Ethan's heart quickened with anticipation and curiosity rather than fear. He felt the pulse of life not only in himself but in the alien beside him, a rhythm that neither fully understood yet instinctively respected. Lyra's eyes caught his repeatedly, each glance a silent conversation, a question posed without words and an answer given in action. They reached a ledge overlooking a vast expanse where the valley opened wide, and Ethan paused, letting the view wash over him, the distant glow of strange mineral formations reflecting like rivers of light. Lyra mirrored his pause, her posture relaxed but alert, and for a moment, the two shared an understanding that the canyon was no longer just a place of danger, but a threshold to something unknown. Ethan crouched, Adjusting a small device that projected a faint holographic map of the surrounding terrain, Lyra leaned closer, her gaze flicking between the projection and the path ahead, a subtle motion of acknowledgement, and then a faint tremor ran through the ground, a reminder that the world they navigated was alive, unpredictable, and full of possibilities. Ethan's fingers tightened around the strap of his pack, steadying himself as he felt Lyra's presence beside him, not as a threat, but as a companion, a protector of the fragile thread of trust they had woven, and together, they began to move forward, each step a choice, each glance a reinforcement of their unspoken bond. The shadows deepened, and the air grew cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of distant flora, alien yet inviting. And as they ventured toward the unknown, Ethan realized that in this quiet moment of connection, amid the strange and beautiful landscape, he was learning something fundamental about courage, patience, and the quiet power of choosing to act with kindness even when nothing guaranteed safety, and the canyon seemed to hold its breath around them, waiting for what they would discover together. The night settled over the jagged canyon, the sky a deep indigo streaked with the faint shimmer of distant stars, and Ethan Miller adjusted the strap of his pack, feeling the cool metal of his tools against his fingertips as he followed Lyra along the narrow ledge, the air thick with the scent of alien minerals and faint ozone, each step deliberate, echoing softly against the rock walls. Lyra moving with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature so large, wings tucked neatly but muscles rippling beneath iridescent scales that caught the starlight and made her appear like a living constellation. Ethan could feel the pulse of her presence beside him, a subtle warmth that contrasted with the chill wind brushing his face, and he marveled at the rhythm of life in her movements, the silent trust growing between them like a fragile bridge over the vast emptiness of the canyon below. They paused at a plateau, a natural balcony overlooking a wide valley where crystalline formations glowed faintly in the starlight, and Ethan crouched to examine a small device that projected a soft holographic map of the terrain, Lyra leaning close, her head tilting, eyes reflecting the faint holographic light. Curiosity and caution mingled in her gaze. Ethan adjusted the projection, highlighting a safe path forward, and she responded with a slow nod, a gesture of recognition that needed no words, the canyon around them alive with subtle sounds, distant shifting rocks, a faint hum from the mineral veins, a wind whisper threading through narrow fissures, every sensory detail sharp and clear, grounding them both in the present while hinting at challenges to come. Ethan rose, brushing dust from his jacket, and Lyra mirrored him, stretching slightly, wings catching the starlight, casting intricate shadows across the rocky ground. They moved on, steps careful but confident, each glance exchanged reinforcing the bond of understanding and respect that had formed through quiet observation and shared experience, a subtle alignment of hearts and minds that transcended their different origins. As they approached a narrow canyon pass, Ethan noticed a faint glimmer ahead, the light reflecting in patterns that suggested motion, and he instinctively slowed, senses alert. Yet Lyra moved forward without hesitation, her confidence contagious, and Ethan felt his own apprehension ease, the mutual trust allowing him to follow where he might have otherwise faltered, the plateau behind them fading into shadow, the world ahead full of unknowns. But for the first time, fear was tempered by companionship, and in that moment, Ethan understood the depth of connection possible between two beings from entirely different worlds, silent, wordless, yet profoundly communicative, the air around them thick with anticipation and unspoken promises, the stars above witness to a bond forged in choice, curiosity, and the quiet courage of extending trust where it might not have been expected. And as they continued into the narrowing canyon, each step carried the weight of discovery, a promise of challenges and revelations ahead, yet grounded in the shared rhythm of breathing, movement, and awareness that tethered them to each other and to the living, breathing world around them. The first light of dawn crept over the jagged canyon walls, painting everything in shades of pale gold and soft lavender, and Ethan Miller squinted against the brilliance, adjusting the strap of his pack as he moved cautiously along the rocky ledge, the terrain uneven beneath his boots yet familiar now after days of navigating its twists and turns. Lyra beside him, wings tucked close, eyes scanning every detail with an intensity that seemed to measure not just the path ahead, but the unseen. Forces that could shift at any moment. The silence between them filled with the subtle sounds of the canyon waking, distant mineral veins resonating faintly, small pebbles shifting with the wind, a bird-like alien creature calling somewhere beyond the rim, each sound weaving a tapestry of alertness and calm. Ethan paused at a cluster of glowing crystals jutting from the cliff face, light refracting in intricate patterns across his jacket and the shimmering scales of Lyra. She stepped closer, nudging him gently with the side of her head, a gesture of shared attention and caution. He nodded and examined the crystals, noting the delicate vibrations and the way the wind shifted around them, subtle signs that a storm or another natural disturbance could come at any moment. They continued forward, Ethan adjusting the small device, projecting a faint holographic map that floated above his wrist, the soft glow illuminating Lyra's face in a way that made her eyes appear even more vivid and reflective. He noted the patterns of her scales in the light, a map of living geometry that mirrored the canyon itself, each contour and ridge telling a story of adaptation and resilience. Ethan felt a quiet thrill at the realization that they were learning to move in perfect unison, responding to environmental cues and to each other with a language beyond words. The canyon stretched into a narrow passage, the air cooler here, carrying the crisp scent of distant mineral springs. He glanced at Lyra and saw the same combination of alertness and trust mirrored in her posture. They stepped together over a series of small ledges, Ethan counting each carefully, Lyra balancing effortlessly, the subtle hum of her presence grounding him in the moment. He adjusted the map to highlight a safe route across an unstable rock shelf, and she followed precisely, the shadows of early morning stretching behind them like dark fingers, light catching the edges of her wings and scales, creating an almost ethereal glow. Ethan felt the calm certainty that comes only from shared purpose and mutual respect. The canyon seemed less threatening, less alien, and more a stage for the unfolding connection. Every step forward was an affirmation of that bond. He could sense Lyra responding to his movements, mirroring his tempo, anticipating his shifts, and he in turn adapted to her subtle cues. The interplay of human instinct and alien awareness creating a rhythm that carried them both through the narrowing pass, a quiet understanding passing between them, that they were no longer just traveler and creature, but companions navigating a world where trust and patience were the most valuable tools. The wind picked up slightly, brushing against their faces with the scent of distant flora, and Ethan felt the energy of movement, the promise of discovery, a gentle thrill in knowing that this shared path, uncertain and full of wonder, was theirs to walk together. And as they moved onward, the canyon seemed to open subtly, revealing glimpses of a wider world beyond, waiting, inviting, yet holding its secrets. Ethan and Lyra continued with quiet determination, each step a blend of caution and curiosity, a testament to the quiet power of mutual respect and the deepening bond between human and alien. The soft glow of the alien dawn painted the canyon in gradients of violet and gold as Ethan Miller adjusted his pack and surveyed the narrow passage ahead, the air crisp with the scent of mineral-rich soil and distant flora, and Lyra moved beside him with a measured grace. Wings tucked but muscles coiled, eyes flicking over every contour of the terrain with precision, the quiet hum of life in the canyon wrapping around them like a living rhythm. Ethan noted the subtle shifts in the wind and the gentle vibration beneath his boots, a delicate signal of movement somewhere beyond the ridges. He crouched momentarily to adjust a sensor on his wrist device, the holographic projection casting a soft light across his face and reflecting faintly in the shimmering patterns of Lyra's scales. She leaned close without touching, observing his actions with a silent intensity, and Ethan felt a connection deepen, a wordless understanding that both were learning to navigate not just the terrain but each other, a dance of observation, anticipation, and trust. They moved forward carefully, the canyon narrowing into a winding corridor where sunlight barely touched the rocky floor, the walls rising on either side like protective sentinels. Ethan sensed the tension in the air, a potential obstacle ahead, Yet the presence of Lyra beside him offered reassurance, her subtle gestures and measured steps guiding his own movements. A constant exchange of cues that required no words, the quiet punctuated by occasional distant sounds, a shift in rock, the faint echo of wind threading through narrow fissures. The crystalline formations along the canyon walls catching the early light and scattering it in a kaleidoscope of subtle color across their path. Ethan paused at one particularly striking cluster, observing the patterns and noting the vibrations that suggested a careful route. Lyra mirrored his pause, her head tilting as though affirming his choice, and together they continued, each step deliberate, the canyon offering both challenge and beauty, a living environment that demanded attention and respect. Ethan felt a quiet thrill in the shared vigilance, each moment reinforcing the fragile yet growing bond. He adjusted his wrist device to highlight the safest path through an upcoming stretch of unstable terrain, Lyra following without hesitation, her eyes reflecting the holographic glow and the natural light in a way that made her appear both luminous and alert. The canyon seemed to breathe around them, alive with subtle motion and the promise of discovery. They advanced in synchrony. Every glance exchanged a reaffirmation of trust, each movement an exercise in patience and coordination. Ethan realized that in this delicate balance between human intuition and alien perception, they were creating a new form of communication, a bridge of understanding and respect. As the canyon opened slightly into a broader expanse ahead, Ethan and Lyra moved forward together, anticipation and curiosity guiding each careful step, the quiet morning enveloping them in a sense of possibility, and the bond forged through shared attention and mutual care carried them onward into the unknown, ready to meet whatever revelations awaited just beyond the next ridge. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long, shifting shadows across the canyon floor as Ethan Miller adjusted the weight of his pack and surveyed the path ahead, the rocky terrain glowing softly under the pale light, while Lyra moved beside him with effortless poise, her wings occasionally flexing to catch subtle air currents, scales reflecting the light in iridescent patterns that danced like liquid glass across her body. The canyon around them alive with gentle sounds, distant echoes of shifting rocks, the soft rustle of alien foliage stirred by a light wind. Ethan felt the quiet exhilaration of navigating a world so different, yet intimately connected to the life moving beside him. He reached out briefly to adjust a sensor on his wrist device, the small holographic projection casting a soft glow that illuminated the fine details of Lyra's scales and the smooth contours of her wings. She leaned slightly closer, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging his attention and the subtle changes he made, their movements synchronized in a rhythm that neither had spoken aloud but both understood instinctively. The canyon narrowed briefly before opening onto a plateau that revealed a breathtaking view of distant cliffs and glowing mineral formations that reflected the sun in a spectrum of soft colors. Ethan paused to take it in, the wind brushing against his face and carrying the faint metallic scent of the canyon's veins. Lyra remained close, shifting her head slowly, eyes following every motion he made, a silent conversation passing between them. A mutual awareness of their shared path and the challenges yet to come. Ethan adjusted his pack and began moving forward, careful steps over uneven rock, the holographic map updating with every subtle shift in terrain. Lyra mirrored his movements precisely, muscles coiling and releasing in harmony with his pace, a sense of calm, focus enveloping them both. The canyon around them alive with subtle vibrations, small pebbles rolling in distant channels, air currents twisting gently through fissures, each sound adding to the ambient awareness that guided their choices. They reached a narrow ridge that required careful balance, Ethan placing each foot deliberately, feeling the texture of the rock beneath his boots, Lyra following with perfect balance, the early sunlight catching the edges of her wings and illuminating her scales, casting a pattern of color across the stone. They paused briefly, Ethan checking the projected route and Lyra watching intently. And then together they continued, every step a testament to the trust that had formed through shared observation, patience, and careful attention. The canyon widening again, revealing new formations and paths that promised discovery and subtle danger alike. Ethan felt the thrill of anticipation, the steady heartbeat of cautious excitement, and the assurance that Lyra's presence beside him transformed every challenge into a shared journey, a quiet partnership defined not by words but by rhythm, attention, and a growing understanding that they were moving through this alien world together, each aware of the other, each step forward building on trust, curiosity, and the quiet joy of mutual support. And as they moved into the next stretch of the canyon, the sunlight glinting off crystalline outcrops, Ethan realized that the rhythm of their journey had become seamless, the canyon no longer threatening but alive with the possibility of discovery, the trust between human and alien guiding them forward with quiet confidence into the unknown. The canyon shifted as the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows across jagged rock formations, and Ethan Miller adjusted the strap of his pack, feeling the weight of the journey yet propelled forward by curiosity and resolve. Beside him, Lyra moved with silent assurance, wings partially unfurled to balance against the uneven ledges, scales catching the light in a mesmerizing spectrum of colors that seemed to ripple with every subtle motion. Ethan noticed how the patterns of her body responded to the environment, alert to every change, and he mirrored her attentiveness, listening to the soft hum of air moving through narrow crevices, feeling the vibrations of distant rock slides beneath his boots, each signal a cue to shift, pause, or step lightly. They reached a narrow passage where the canyon walls rose steeply, sunlight barely piercing the gap, and Ethan crouched slightly, scanning the area for safe footing, the holographic map projecting faint paths that illuminated potential hazards. Lyra moved beside him, scanning with a deliberate grace, her gaze shifting from the map to the terrain with an understanding that felt intuitive. Together they navigated the passage, every step an exercise in trust, the canyon quiet but alive with subtle hints of movement, distant mineral formations resonating softly with the vibrations of unseen activity. Ethan felt a surge of awareness, attuned not only to his surroundings but to the presence of Lyra beside him, the rhythm of their steps and breaths aligning as they moved in synchrony, a silent agreement of care and vigilance. The passage opened suddenly into a broader chamber where the walls glimmered faintly from embedded crystals, and Ethan paused, filling his chest, the play of light on Lyra's scales accentuating her otherworldly beauty. She observed him in turn, tilting her head, a question without words, and Ethan responded with a gentle nod, acknowledging their shared moment of wonder. The canyon seemed to hold its breath around them, the air crisp and alive, carrying the scent of distant flora and minerals. Ethan adjusted a sensor on his wrist device, scanning the space for stability, and Lyra mirrored his careful assessment, her subtle movements fluid, precise, and reassuring. They advanced slowly through the chamber, navigating around protruding crystals and uneven ledges, the soft hum of natural vibrations guiding their choices. Ethan felt a quiet thrill in their combined awareness, a growing recognition of the trust that had been cultivated through each careful step, glance, and gesture. As they moved toward a narrowing corridor, the light dimmed, filtered through the high canyon walls, and Ethan felt a pulse of anticipation, the shared rhythm of their movement creating a bond that transcended the alien landscape. Every step forward carried weight and purpose, every glance a reaffirmation of mutual respect, and in that suspended moment, he understood the depth of the connection between them, a quiet courage manifest in trust and observation. And as they rounded a bend to face an unknown stretch of the canyon, Ethan and Lyra moved with calm determination, prepared to meet the challenges ahead, guided by instinct, patience, and the silent but powerful partnership that had formed through days of shared navigation and attention to the living world around them. The canyon opened into a wide expanse bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon light, and Ethan Miller stepped carefully over uneven rocks, feeling the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat and the subtle vibrations of the ground beneath him, while Lyra moved beside him with deliberate grace, wings flexing slightly to maintain balance, and her iridescent scales catching every glimmer of sunlight, creating a shimmering aura that seemed almost alive. Ethan adjusted the small holographic map on his wrist, projecting the faint outline of the terrain ahead, and Lyra leaned close, observing the contours and elevations with a focus that mirrored his own, a silent collaboration forming between them, each movement a conversation without words, the canyon alive with the faint hum of mineral veins, the distant whisper of wind threading through narrow passages, and Ethan felt a quiet thrill at the synchronicity of their steps. The way the alien and human instincts aligned perfectly, they paused at a series of crystal outcrops that glowed softly, casting shifting patterns of color across the canyon floor. Ethan crouched to examine a particularly intricate formation, the holographic device highlighting potential pathways that wound safely around the fragile crystals. Lyra hovered nearby, tilting her head, eyes reflecting the holographic light and the natural shimmer of the crystals, and Ethan nodded subtly, acknowledging the unspoken confirmation that they would proceed together, each carefully measured step reinforcing the trust between them. The canyon narrowed again, a natural corridor leading toward a distant plateau where the light seemed to dance across jagged stone edges. Ethan felt a surge of anticipation, the canyon full of unknowns yet made navigable by the steady presence of Lyra. He adjusted his pace to match her subtle shifts, her movements fluid and precise, alert to every nuance of the terrain as they advanced. Ethan observed the interplay of shadow and light, the canyon walls absorbing the golden glow of the sun and reflecting faint fragments across their path. Lyra paused briefly, scanning ahead, and Ethan followed her gaze, recognizing in that moment that she was not just moving with him, but for him as well. A guardian of both space and trust, they stepped over narrow ledges and around glowing mineral formations, the canyon alive with subtle motion, distant echoes, and the shifting light creating a sense of depth and anticipation. Ethan felt the quiet power of their partnership, the combination of human ingenuity and alien perception guiding them through the unknown. Every glance, gesture, and careful step a reaffirmation of the bond that had grown through days of shared navigation, attention, and care. As they reached the edge of the plateau, the view stretching wide, revealing hidden valleys and crystalline formations shimmering in the fading light, Ethan and Lyra paused, absorbing the vastness before them, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, the canyon around them still and alive, anticipation mingling with awe. And in that suspended moment, Ethan felt a deep understanding of the quiet strength, patience, and trust that had carried them to this point. The next stage of their journey poised just beyond the horizon, filled with possibility, revelation, and the continuation of a bond forged in observation, care, and mutual respect. The sky was a deep indigo streaked with the last traces of fading light as Ethan Miller stood on the edge of the plateau, feeling the cool breeze brush against his face, carrying the faint scent of distant flora and mineral dust, while Lyra moved beside him with silent grace, wings partially extended to maintain balance over the uneven stone, her iridescent scales catching the dim light and casting shifting patterns that danced like liquid across the canyon floor. Ethan adjusted the strap of his pack and let his gaze wander across the expanse before them, a network of crystalline formations, jagged cliffs, and hidden valleys stretching as far as he could see, the canyon alive with subtle sounds, distant echoes, and the soft hum of shifting minerals. Lyra tilted her head, eyes reflecting the remaining glow of the sky, and Ethan felt a profound sense of connection, the bond forged through days of careful movement, shared attention, and silent trust crystallizing in that moment. He crouched briefly to examine a small cluster of glowing crystals at the edge, noting their vibrations and subtle shifts. Lyra hovering beside him, every motion deliberate, the two of them moving as a single unit, a silent partnership that allowed them to anticipate the terrain and each other with precision. They advanced toward a narrow path leading down into the valley, the light dimming as shadows stretched across the canyon. Ethan felt the quiet exhilaration of exploration, each careful step a reaffirmation of trust and shared awareness. The canyon seemed to breathe around them, alive with a rhythm that they both tuned into instinctively. Small dust motes lifted by the breeze catching in Lyra's scales, sparkling like tiny stars against the darkening backdrop. Ethan glanced at her, the faint reflection of the last sunlight in her eyes, and he understood the depth of their connection, a bridge built from observation, patience, and the courage to act with care and respect. They reached the base of a crystalline ridge, the mineral formations glowing softly in the dim light, and Ethan felt a swell of awe at the beauty of the alien world. Lyra paused, wings flexing slightly, her eyes sweeping the terrain with focus and curiosity. Ethan mirrored her attention, together assessing the safest route forward. Every subtle motion a conversation of trust, the canyon opening to reveal a hidden valley that seemed untouched, alive with potential and mystery. Ethan stepped carefully, feeling the pulse of the ground beneath him and the presence of Lyra at his side, the bond between them anchoring each movement and decision. The twilight deepening, casting a soft glow across the landscape. Ethan and Lyra moved forward, aware of the delicate balance between caution and curiosity, each step an affirmation of their unspoken agreement to watch, learn, and protect one another. As the hidden valley stretched before them, Ethan felt a quiet sense of triumph, not in conquest, but in the discovery of connection, understanding, and the remarkable strength found in shared trust. The canyon falling into shadow around them, the stars beginning to shine above, reflecting faintly in Lyra's eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared and the mysteries that still awaited, leaving both human and alien poised at the threshold of wonder, anticipation, and the quiet power of empathy.